When and where were you born?
Um, Uvalde, Texas. My daddy was a conductor on a railroad, and my mother was born in Arkansas.
They tell me I was born in the June the 26th, 1921, but that's just guesswork. I don't think nobody really knows when I was born. When we were little, I must have been five years old when me and my sister were left home alone, and we heard some noise outside, and we thought, boy, somebody's trying to break in. So we called the police. Oh, here come two big policemen. Well, it seemed like there was a shovel banging in the wind against the house. Anyway, he says, "Where's your mother?" We said, "We don't know." He said, "You mean you two little kids are here all by yourself?" "Yep." Well, he said, "I think it's time you guys go to bed." So we went upstairs and went to bed. But we could hear everything that was going on. I don't know what time it would be. I would guess probably around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when this policeman said, "You left these two kids all by themselves?" He says, I work out at the 19th hole golf course at the restaurant. And he said, "You mean till this time in the morning?" "Well, no," she says, we go out, we have parties and whatnot. And the next morning it was real early because I was still in bed. I heard a woman's voice, and she said she was from the Child Welfare Department.
We went up in the mountains, and they named a tree up there after the Carroll. So there's a great big tree up there called the Carroll tree,
Aw.
which is, we've been up there and to see it, and it's still there. They haven't cut it down.
Mm-hmm.
It's got our name on it,
Aw.
and so that's all right. We're in history. Then we moved to Exeter, and then across the street was a grove of olive trees, and there was a big Mexican settlement just before we got there. And so when I would go to the little corner grocery store, I would have to run about 3 blocks till I got to my house. We had to pass the judge's house. I would always yell and call Vern and bad names, and he'd say, "You better stay on that side of your side of the fence, or I'll come and cut your ears off." And so I was careful not to go, but I sure called him lots of names. My daddy had bees on the. We had a reservoir, and he had bees on the reservoir's edge. And Mom had catfish. Yeah, she'd go out and catch them. We got a picture of them.
The priest came down and he said, "We have an orphanage up between Sumner Fell and Petaluma." It's a sad part of my life was I had no childhood. I didn't have no motherly love or nothing. We had a play yard, but nothing to play with, just dirt. We had to draw sticks and dirt in the ground to entertain ourselves. And the law says you got to go to school, but the law don't say you have to be taught anything. Well, these sisters couldn't speak English. We went up in the classroom, we learned catechism and a lot of Catholic stuff, but we didn't learn A, B, and C, and D and all that good stuff. They put me up in the infirmary. Well, what I know about it, and I'm just maybe 6 years old about this time, and the kids would have a scratch, and she'd tell me, "You wrap it up and put the tape." So I wrap it up and put the tape, and didn't know what I was doing, but I must have been pretty smart because the tape was always there the next morning. And they put me in there sewing buttons. She says, "You'll do this one time. You go through one time." I said, "Okay, I do one time." And the next day, all these dang big container of buttons would come, and all these shirts would come with no buttons. And I thought, well, there's something screwy here. We got to do something about that. So I started going through 3 times. Oh boy, she caught me. Man, she had a fit. She says, you're wasting thread, you're wasting string. I said, well, the buttons aren't coming back. I don't care, you're wasting string. Well, so anyway, when she was around, I went one time. When she wasn't around, I went 4 times. Well, we had breakfast, and it was mush, oatmeal mush. I don't know whether you ever cooked oatmeal mush the old-time way. You always had a skim, a little thin skim of nothing on top with a settlement of the oatmeal, I guess. But anyway, the oldest kid in the table would cut it in 4 pieces. Well, he'd put the skim that way, and he'd take his portion. The next guy pushed the thing that way, he'd take his portion. The next guy would cut the skim this way, he'd take his portion, and my portion was the skim. When we got married, I told her, boy, I don't want to ever see any oatmeal in this house. We had baked oatmeal, we had fried oatmeal, we had oatmeal almost 3 times a day. I guess that was the cheapest thing they could feed us.
We had a garden, grew, and then we washed them and made bunches. And then we would sell them so much, a crate. The crates cost a certain amount through the grocery stores. We had no Model T Ford. Daddy and I did. It was a touring car, but we stripped it down and made a pickup out of it.
Nice.
And we would fill it as full of crates as it would possibly carry going down the street like that. My sister died. She got killed burned to death in an accident. Isn't that horrible? And my mother was never the same. You know, it broke her heart because she was a sweetheart, and I wasn't. I was always a stinker. And Mama didn't like me at all. I didn't like her either. So anyway, it was not a happy childhood.
I guess when I was 14, who come in the door was this woman. Who was this woman? I never seen her. They said, well, that's your mother. Oh, that's my mother? You know, the whole time I was in the orphanage, she never came one time. Well, she was married to a pervert. He liked little boys, little girls. Anyway, he was a weird person. So I went with him, and him and my mother both worked for Pinkerton Detective Agency. And a lot of people don't know this or remember, Harry Bridges was the head of the Law Enforcement Union in San Francisco. And he was being investigated as a communist. That's why this Charles Charling went into work as a longshoreman. Then he got up to be a right-hand man to Harry Bridges and he'd write a report every night. Somehow or another, they got back to Harry Bridges that he was a detective and he was spying on him. Well, the next thing we knew, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. They said, just wear your clothes and take 1 change of clothes. And we left, because if we hadn't left, they would have killed him. Because in them days, they did that. After a while, they found out that Harry Bridges was not a communist. What the deal was, he refused to buy any more iron and ship it over to Japan on the West Coast. He was in charge of the West Coast. He said, they have no need for this much iron, and what they're doing, they're going to build it up and they're going to shoot it back at you. All these Model T Fords are going to come right back, and it did. Well, it proved that he was right. Well, here we are starting for Chicago, and here we were cramped up on this stupid thing, and I got out and I told my brother Dick, I said, let's go out and hitchhike, and we ate dried cheese and dry bread, and that was what we ate all the way back to Chicago. And one time I decided I was going to ride the rails. There was one boxcar, the door was open and the train wasn't moving. It was all hooked up, but it wasn't moving. So I thought, well, I'm going to jump up in there and see what's going on, you know. So I jumped up in there, and as I got in, I seen 2 guys at that end of the car. So I ran to the other end of the car and got in the corner. And pretty soon the train started to move. And it was moving real slow. And these guys came over and he said, kid, you got any money? I said, no, I don't have no money. you got money in your shoe. Every kid has money in their shoe. I said, this kid don't have nothing. So as I started to take off my shoe, the door was still open. And those two guys just scared me, boy. I bent down like I got up like I was going to tie my shoe, and I ran between them and I jumped out the door. Boy, I dang near killed myself, but I got out of there. And I remember I worked on a ranch, a cattle ranch. The guy said, do you know how to cowboy? I said, oh sure. I didn't know what a cowboy was, but I had to bluff my way all through my whole life. I bluffed my way. He said, okay. He says, we pay $1 a day, and it's from sun up to sundown, and then we charge 50 cents for board and room. So I made 50 cents. That's more than I had yesterday. The next morning they got out, and they said, there's your horse right there. And they gave me a saddle. Well, that horse was way up here and I'm way down here. Now, how in the heck am I supposed to get this saddle on that horse? Or how am I supposed to get the bridle? Or how, I didn't know what a bridle was, but how was I supposed to get that thing in that horse's mouth that those guys are doing? Well, there was a big black man there, and he took a liking to me. He said, I'll take care of you. He says, he put the saddle on, put the bridle on, and he says, I'll tell you what to do. He said, just watch what those guys do, and then do the same thing that they're doing. We had to go through all this mesquite with big spiny needle stuff on their feet. My legs were all cut up from them dang things. What they were doing, they were getting all the cows up in an area, and they had ticks as big as your thumb on them all over them. And they had a big vat, and they would kick them into this creosote tank, and they'd swim across the tank, and the ticks would fall off. Well, when you get all done, you bring your horse right up to it, and horses are smarter than the cows. The horse had probably been in there, and they didn't want to go in there again. So as they go ahead, they put a board behind the horse so he can't back up, right? But when you get to the end, they tell you to take that out of your mouth, take the bridle out. Well, I take the bridle out, and the horse didn't want to go, and I was standing there aside so the horse could go. And that guy gave that horse one of them electric shot things, and that horse jumped. And he jumped over me. Pow! Splash, and I had creosote all over my legs. And the mat of ticks must have been at least a foot thick. Now, if I'd have gone in there, I'd have drowned, because there's no way in the world I could have fought through a pile of dead ticks that deep. So I decided this cowboying on me wasn't the thing.
When I was a little bitty kid, Mom had my brother 6 years younger, and that night I ran away from home, and I was in bed with a little kid down the street at Fireballs Ranch, and my brother, he came and got me and took me home. And then I was going to school over there, and Mom didn't care because she didn't like me to go to high school.
Oh.
And she said I'd learn too much bad. So I had no high school education. Later on, I decided that I always felt bad about that. So I took a high school course, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I passed it.
But anyway, we got to Chicago, and I wanted to go to school because I didn't know nothing. I hardly knew the alphabet. And I thought, well, the school was right there. And they said, no, you can't go to school because along Sherman to San Francisco might find out where Charlie is, and so you can't go to school. So I didn't get no schooling. And we got back to California, Santa Maria, California. Then I worked for Luke Tractor Company. Why, the guy said, why don't you head up to Morro Bay? There's a big rock. I said, I think that's where my mother and my brother are, up there someplace. So I head up. Well, the old Model T got on top of that hill, and it decided that was all it wanted. It froze up. So I had to push a little bit, and I pushed it and it started down the hill. That's what's Main Street now. And right on the corner, there was a Union gas station. So I coasted in the back end of it, and I went up and talked to the guy, and I said, I'll tell you, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but everything I own is in that Model T, and it's blown up. And he said, well, he said, you know, I could use some help around here once in a while. He said, you ever work in a gas station? Oh yeah, never in my life. Hell yeah, I ever work in a gas station. Then I got the job out at the hotel, and that's when I met her.
But I met him, he was making salads. And then he said, when a new waitress is hired, we take turns taking them out.
And I told her, I said, you're the last one hired, so you have to take me out to dinner.
So that was our first date. We went to San Luis to the only show that was there. And then we went up on the hill and looked at the scenery.
2 o'clock in the morning, we were sitting out in front of her house, there where the Hotel 6 is now. That was there. They farmed 40 acres there. But anyway, when I went over to kiss her goodnight, which I never had these kisses before I met her, so I didn't know what a kiss was really. When I reached over and I hit the horn, well, the front door opened up and a woman come out and she said, Edna Mae, if you keep this up, you're going to have to get a bed and a stove. She said, oh, go back in my house. So I said, well, I've got the bed, I've got the stove, I've got the house, I got a car, and I got a pickup, and it's all paid for. That's that room there. And so the next thing we know, after she got mad at me a few times, why, I got smart. When I was trimming things, I was trimming a trumpet vine, and it has a big white, long white flower. So I used to take them, I didn't take them to her, I took them to her mother.
And then that we were dating steady after that.
Now, when did you get married?
August 23rd, 41. We went into we were just in San Luis, and he says, well, why don't we go over to Justice Peace?
Okay.
And so that's what we did.
We got our license and walked across the street to a police court judge, and we got married. And he had to use the secretary down the hall, and he phoned his wife to come for witness.
And just said, I do, you know.
Nice.
I do you, and yes, I do. Do you? Yes, I do.
But anyway, we come here at the house, and I had one light globe. She had a hopeless chest. Most all the young girls in them days had hopeless chests. Well, she had everything that we needed. Well, everything that I had, she threw out. She kept,
What did he have?
but she
A
kept
clock?
everything. She
He
kept,
had practically nothing.
we headed out to Oakland for a honeymoon. I had an Oldsmobile, a 38 Oldsmobile at that time. And we went up to Oakland and we spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 days up there. The guy says, all I have is two single beds. And I said, that's all right. So we took it and we had what young married couple do on a honeymoon. And the next morning we got up and the single bed was still made. She went over and pulled all the blankets. I said, what are you doing? She says, I don't want to think we slept together.
And the war came along. Oh, we had to have the shades drawn, blackout, because we couldn't have the Japanese looking over here and shooting at us. He went into the service in the latter part of the war, but he was here for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to Japan. 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years. We did pretty good, you know. My wife, after I got in the service, she got $90 a month. Can you imagine that? $90 a month? The poor people, the little people, they had no, it's whatever Hirohito and his warlords, whatever they said to do, you did. You know, they're a little guy just like me. They say, shoot that guy, you shoot him. I carried a 40, a 45, but I thought if I ever had to shoot him, I'm going to shoot him in the leg. I'm not going to kill anybody. Because that poor guy, he's there just because I'm there, because they said you go, you know. I told myself, you know, I'm not gonna be no come back a dead hero. I might be coming back a live coward, but I sure ain't gonna be no dead hero. So I just stayed right down the middle of the road. I never volunteered for nothing, and that's the best way to go. If you volunteer, why, you might get the dirty end of the stick. So you just, when they say, well, you go do it, then you go do it, but don't volunteer for nothing. I was a crane operator on a repair ship, an LSD. But that's what's called a landing ship dock. We used to sink the ship down and drive the LCMs in, and each LCM had a LCDP inside it. And as they would come in, we'd take the LCP and put them in the water and until we got them all emptied, and then we'd pump out, and we'd pump up, we were empty. And they use those for invasions. All the little amphibious boats, I think I only was in 2 actual landings. And I always got tied up with the port director, Lieutenant Commander Arch, and he was the big shot of all the port director, and he told everybody what to do. Well, he took a liking to me, so he kept me as for that. So I got off the crane from that LSD and went in with him. And we went all through the Philippines, and we went all over the Marshall and the Gilbert and Borneo and Tahiti and Espiritu Santo, all over the islands. Anyway, we got down to Okinawa. That was the last one. And Japan had everything that they had was in on that island in Bucker Bay. We were on one side of the island, and then we were coming together in the middle. I seen a kamikaze coming over the mountain there, and I thought, well, and he started down, and I said, man, he's gonna come and land right on our lap. And I sure ain't gonna be no dead hero, I'm gonna take off. So I jumped off the crane and I started down the passageway, and boy, boom, boy, that took it. But it hit me in my back and slid me down the passageway, down the ladder, down the next passageway, and just tore all the clothes off of me. And so I ran down and I wasn't bloodied or nothing. I felt like somebody just hit me with a wet towel in the back. But I went down, changed clothes, went back up and got on the crane, and we started pulling pieces of that airplane out of the deck and putting it overboard. Finished the invasion, and that's when Japan said that's enough. So then we headed for Kobe, Japan. So Arson told me, he said, well, this is Commander Arson. He said, you take 4 boats and go up that little channel there. He had a map and he showed me, and he said there's a war prison camp hauling them people out. I said, okay, we took these 4 boats and we went up, and they were all Aussie and Scottish. Couldn't even understand them. And they all had yellows on us, all of them had yellow eyes. And they were so happy to see us, so we loaded them all up. We got out into Loch Elma Bay, and there was no boats, no ships, no nothing out. What the heck's going on? I finally found him, and I said, what's going on? I said, where's all the ships? He said, well, there was 5 kamikazes flying around, and they thought maybe they were going to come down and get these ships that were in the harbor. So I advise you guys to go back up there at that prison camp, he said, because we don't know what these kamikazes, if they know the war's over with or what, but they won't bomb up there. So man, we hightailed up there. We were up there 2 days, and then the word came that we could come back down. And we had to eat that prison camp food. Boy, no rotten stuff. That's why I could eat rotten stuff and think nothing about it. But anyway, they took over the Imperial Big Honcho Hirohito's summer cottage. It was a cottage where it must have been 50,000 rooms. Beautiful. They gave us a room, and they gave us a little mat, laid it on the floor. You leave your shoes outside. You don't wear your shoes inside. And pretty soon this little Vichy girl come in, scared the heck out of you. You know, they're all white-faced and little lipsticks, and and they bring in a pot of charcoal, and they set a little pot of charcoal beside his bed. That's to keep you warm all night, see? And then later on in the evening, 3 girls come in, and I said, don't bother me. I said, those guys, they wish I had a room about half the size of this, and we one over there, and I was over here. I said, you go over there. I said, just don't bother me. Well, the Geisha girls were, in their time, were to keep all the big shots happy, you know. But I didn't care for it. They didn't look very good to me, and I didn't have the desire for them anyway.
Then it was over, so he got to come home. You were working for the garbage business before we...
Yeah. The guy who owned the garbage company, he won $1,000 for it. Well, I had worked with it with Miles Castle. We had a 35 Chevrolet pickup is what we hauled the garbage in. Then I went up to Cayucas, and I got quite a bit of trade at Cayucas, and in between Cayucas and Morro Bay, I ended up with 500 customers from about 7 to 500.
And then I did all the book work. And then we had a bookkeeper uptown in an office, and she collected the bills.
You go up Quintana Road, up where Albertsons is, that road, that was a city dump. That was out of town. I mean, you were way out of town then. I got a notice, when are you going to clean up the property, the mess you made? Oh, what the heck they talking about? So I thought, well, I better get a lawyer and find out what's going on. He said, well, I'll look into it. He said, well, they're suing you or anybody that they know of that's been dumping there for all these years. They want you to clean the mess up. And I said, well, I can't afford to clean up the mess. He said, he called me up, he said, well, forget it. He said, just don't pay no more attention to it. He said, I'll take care of it and I'll settle it with their lawyers within an hour. And I said, what happened? He said, you weren't dumping on their property, you were dumping on county property. I was on this side of the pole. So I wasn't dumping on their property, the county pushed it over on their property. So I got out of that. Well, about that time, when the city found out they had no place to dump, and these people that were hauling their own garbage were starting to dump it anywhere, you know. So Mr. Kachi, he was kind of an old-timer dairyman here. And he said, I'll find you a place out there at the ranch. He said, you go dump out there. I guess we had it 6 years, and I went to get out of bed, and I was halfway paralyzed from my waist down. And I went over to the Veterans Hospital, and they operated on me, and they found particles of rust and dirt and all kinds of things in my back, in my vertebrae. And they took out 3. They said, they asked me what I did. I told them, well, I had to, by that time I had built it up to bigger trucks and whatnot than the pickup. And you pick up a can and have to dump it, you know. He said, if you hadn't done that, he said, you probably would never have bothered you. Then after it was all over with, I sold out and was gone. And here I got another suit to clean up the mess I made. I said, I didn't make no mess. He said, oh yeah, you did. We got pictures of you dumping. City had leased this section of land and paying this guy $50 a month for lease, and they charged me $50 a month, so they came out clean, you know. They're the ones that told me where to dump. So I got out of that. And then they got to searching it, finding out that that wasn't even on the guy's property that we were dumping on. This other guy had a ranch, and when he bought the ranch and they surveyed, they found out, well, all that area there was all in this ranch over here. It didn't belong to this guy over here. So that guy over there was making $50 a month, so I could dump on somebody else's property.
And then we had Donnie. And then 4.5 years later, we decided we'd have our second, and that's all we would have. Then decided later, somebody had a little kid, I think Sally, Vita Sally. That was our nurse for Donnie. I took care of Sally a lot, and she was such a doll. And I decided that we would try again for a girl.
Where were your kids born?
In this house.
Oh, you didn't even go to the hospital or anything?
No.
Oh, wow. Did you at least have a midwife?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My friend was a nurse. She
Okay.
lived across the street.
Oh, that's so convenient.
Wasn't that nice?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She died just not long ago. But
Oh.
we've always been good friends. She was a sweetheart. They were boys. I'm glad they weren't girls.
Why do you say that?
Because I'd have killed them
Oh, no.
with their short skirts. You know,
Oh.
we only had one school up on the hill. Donnie was a stinker from the word start. And then Richie and Timmy were wonderful. When Donnie was about 14, he and I had argued. We couldn't say one kind word to each other. We were sitting in the table with guests, a sheriff, a deputy sheriff, and his wife. I asked Donnie to get up and get something while we were eating. And he said, "Get it yourself." And Daddy reached over, got up and grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, and he took him out the back door. Oh, I don't even think we had this room yet. He took him out of the house and the back door, I think, and down the driveway, and he gave him $1 bill, and he said, "Don't you ever come in this house again."
Oh.
And that, like I say, he was about 14. And boy, he changed over, and he was the sweetest kid you ever saw after that.
Like I say, here where I'm right now, I'm probably the third oldest house in this area. And she used to build a fire outside. That's where she'd cook outside and heat the water for the kids' bath and wash clothes. She'd go down to Willows, where the PG&E plant is now. It was all full of willows. She'd go down there and cut willow branches, because I was working daylight to dark, just trying to make a living, you know. Front door used to be here. We used to have a porch and stairway down out there. And then we decided to make the kitchen a little bit bigger. We made the kitchen 6 feet bigger. And this room was built about 1943. This was the kids' bedroom.
Okay.
Donnie and Richie's bedroom. So the reason the ceiling's so low, I went by when I cut the roof off and cut that house and lowered it down, I just kept the same level. So I put in a false roof here, false ceiling, and we use it just as a storeroom now. Oh, and then we decided to move things around, and I moved the bathroom from there over to here, and then over down to there.
What's over here?
Well, and this is a bedroom when she was pregnant with Timmy. This ended up Donnie's bedroom. Each one of these rooms has a special roof. There's not one full roof over the whole house. So she made this thing. She invented this thing here, so the kids would have drawers, and then the other side would be the cupboard, you know, for their clothes. Yeah, she was quite an artist at her time. I did that when I had my back operated on when I was recovering. I've got a whole bunch of old radios. This was our bedroom. See up on top of the thing up there, that's the old mule theme. You don't see them things anymore.
And here's your garage.
This is what all this stuff came from, that motel down there. And that safe down there come from the Bank of America in San Francisco.
Wow. How'd you get it?
Well, we hauled, my stepfather worked for a place that tore the building down, and he said these were too high, and he talked them out of the bottom one.
Power tools and stuff.
Yeah. See, I've got the chickee that goes in there to make it
to make it a combination lock if you wanted it.
I noticed you got a lot of old tools and stuff over here.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah, a lot of these were my tools when I was working in the trade. The old nuts used to be square. So you get in there and put the nut in there. You didn't have to worry about anything. Then here was a set of dies, so you could rethread, you know. Yeah, there. So if you just had small ones, you just put them in there and it'd take that size all the way down to that size. You didn't need all them sockets. And these here would go in and take the spark plug out. So you could either have a small latch you put on there. If you needed a bigger one, you just go down on the bigger size. They had a lot of sense when they made a lot of these things. See, when you worked on your own ignition system, these were all the tools you used to overhaul ignition. But they don't have ignitions no more. I've used this a lot of times. The old Chevrolets, you use this for setting valve guides and whatnot. That was kind of a unique item for the distributor. See the little. So you had to turn it to get to adjust the valve,
right.
and that did the whole thing.
Nice.
Now you gotta pay somebody $100 an hour to do that. This was my rock shop when I had a rock shop.
What'd you use the rock shop for?
Well, I made rocks and made brochures and rings and all that stuff. My saws used to sit there. If you'll notice, you'll see a lot of radios. And those are all speakers and radios. And those are all speakers. These are all radios.
Wow.
They're all CB radios. A friend of mine from England, when they quit there, he was collecting them, and one time he sent a big box over from England, and those were in a box. This was my tool set when I first started working.
Right over here?
Yeah.
This is your very first set of tools?
Yeah, that was my set of tools. And the property line, fence line used to be here before we built that. And I had this used to be a big vegetable garden. The septic tank is right here. Well, that's her playhouse. I built that. I built it so it wouldn't block her window and it wouldn't block that window.
Who painted these paintings?
Huh?
These paintings over here.
Those Edna's.
Edna painted these?
Yeah. That one down the bottom, she painted it on glass. Yeah, those are her paintings. So when I built a room for her to display her paintings, see if you ever get the urge to paint, why, we got, these are all frames and whatnot. I don't know what's in all them boxes. All that stuff, that thing is full of artist stuff. When we built this room, I was going to build a toilet for her in here. And then I had to pay a $5,000 school tax. I said, heck, I ain't gonna pay. She walked across the hall.
So it became a closet instead.
Yeah, so we'll just see how she has everything lined up. She has boxes of everything. This is the front of the old house, where the two windows are. That's all it was. And then I added a 6-foot kitchen. And then did that up.
What's the story behind this fence?
That fence is from, we did the highway down to Buellton, you know, the 4x4s or whatever they are, that sits out in front for the guardrail.
Yeah.
Well, I brought them home and her and the kids split them all. And that's what we made the fence out of.
What about the skulls?
Huh?
The cow skulls?
Well, That's all my family tree. That's me and my wife and all the kids and grandkids and great-grandkids.
I do have a question about that big old bone there. What is that?
That's a whale's head.
It's a whale's head.
Yeah, some guy advertised it over at Tascadero. Didn't want it, so we went over and got it, paid $100 for it, and took 5 guys. I said, you put it in my pickup, I'll buy it. And that window, that's the one that I told you was in the Robertson Hotel in San Luis. Like I say, this would take 73 years to do.
So when was this part built?
60, 70 area. All my goodie things, my old souvenirs, and that was her. That's her cabinet for antique. A lot of good, expensive plates there. We built just that room. We don't intend to build that room, and we had $6,000. The guy said, "Heck, we got enough to build a bedroom." This here was when the kids were little. We went to Disneyland and had this picture painted. And I had it someplace. Edna picked it up and she put it on the screen.
So what's the story behind this guy?
Well, that's all our. That's my. Right at the end of the war. We were on just ready, heading for Okinawa. We were on a secret mission on that one. That's when you go across the equator. You're not a pollywog anymore. They have quite a deal. And all these things here are old Gus from England. Every time he'd come, he'd bring us something. These are all unique inside. They got inside the buildings. You can see inside some of them. I think of that one. And he used to bring us. You could almost tell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 years he came. Every year. I was working south, and I come home on weekends, and then I work on it on weekends. And I said, "How much do them things cost?" And she said, $10 a piece. I said, "Oh my God, heck, you couldn't buy them for $100 now." She did all the screw work. Edna did all that carving on the beams, and you could tell she liked shellfish. Every place you look, there's shells.
You've been in Morro Bay for...
Since I was 14.
How has Morro Bay changed in that time?
Oh, wow. There was one drugstore, and golly, there was nothing. Yeah, it was a little old place, and then we had Riley's.
Mm-hmm.
Remember down there, Riley's?
Yeah, that was a long time.
Had clothing.
Oh, okay.
We went to Los Sos, Baywood Park,
Mm-hmm.
to a grocery store over there for our meat.
Okay.
Because the others didn't have it, and he didn't like chicken. So we just had to do veal and beef.
How has the fishing industry changed since you first moved here?
I think they don't let you have it now because of the mercury. Man, we lived on it. Eel and fish.
Clams.
In fact, gooey ducks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what gooey ducks are?
I actually do know what a gooey duck is. I've never tried one. I want to try one of these
they're
days.
great.
That was, you either fished or you worked at the abalone plant. You either worked on a boat, you were either a boat driver or you were a line tender or a diver. A lot of guys started out that and ended up diving. I put on a suit one time in the bay and I got down to the bottom of the bay and I turned that air valve and I shot myself up. And they said, "What's the matter?" I said, "Get me out of this thing." I had claustrophobia. And I didn't know I had claustrophobia until I got down under there. Albacore season, we go albacore fishing, and in the tourist time, we sit there. We have to walk people down the beach, and he had a rowboat, and he put them in a rowboat, row out to the, and that was in front of where PG&E plant is right now. That's where we anchored it.
I don't know, I guess they fished it out. There's too many, they were all gone. People went down and just, get a ton of them and have a big old fish fry. So that was a problem.
All this area where we are now, the Delmar district, we planted cow corn, and we sold it silo for dairies. And then the other end of town, or just this end of Zanzibar, we raised sweet peas and raised calves. And then on the other side of the highway, that was all potatoes. There was enough surface water, we never had to irrigate them, they just grew good potatoes. A lot of people don't know what all that property is involved. All that property, when they built the hotel, the guy that, or the company or investments that built it, they put a sewer line in, curbs and gutters and all that stuff in there. In fact, the sewer line that they're working on is the same sewer line that was put in. The tax money wasn't coming in. So the state confiscated all that land, all the hotel and everything. Well, it was years and years and years later, Paul Merrick and some other judges and lawyers all got together and tried to figure out how we can accomplish that. Well, they bought it all up from the state for a fourth of what the taxes was. On the other end of the highway, when you go down the road and there's big eucalyptus trees, well, that north of that, this Red Becker and Parker started to build houses. Almost all the little houses in there started from Red Becker and Parker, and they were all backed by. The only reason these guys got that land so cheap is because they were all big shots. Merrick was the sheriff, and had lawyers and doctors and judges and everything were all invested in this setup. Otherwise, a little guy would never got it up into Sacramento and argued the point, let's do this, do that. And there's people there in the Barcadero. If you own the land, and down there, you own the land to the high mark of where the water come in. Well, when they filled the bay and there's no water coming in there no more, when they dredged and filled it. But you still own that land even though they filled it. So if you go down there where the boat ramp is, you see that fence line through there? Well, that's property line to those people. They own to that fence line. Well, after the wars, when it started going, a lot of these people were in Camp San Luis and Camp Roberts, and they liked this area, so they decided that they were going to move here. So Arkansas and Kansas and Texas, a lot of them moved here. And the golf course used to only be a nine hole, and then they built it up. And since the tourists started coming over here, the local people don't play golf on Saturday and Sundays because it's too expensive. The local people can't use it. The tourists took over the town. You're taking your life in your own hands if you go uptown on Saturday or Sunday, because it's just so congested. And those guys, they don't care whether there's a stop sign or not. They go. We got a four-way down, this one right down here. You got to watch it, because two cars will come at the same time.
What would you say would be the biggest thing that hasn't changed, or that has not changed in Morro Bay?
Potholes.
Is there anything that's not changed?
Potholes.
Huh?
Potholes in the road.
That's a good one.
They're still here.
You had the Cold War where you had the communist scare. What was that like?
Well, we weren't involved in it really. We didn't have no television, no papers or nothing. So we actually didn't know what was going on. We had a little radio, but we didn't pay no attention to it because we didn't figure we were involved in it,
When did you first get a television?
When they first came out,
And we had one of the first televisions in the area.
we used to watch the Cisco Kid
Oh.
and was it Hopalong Cassidy?
Big old Black Bart.
And what was that other one that we used to watch?
We
Boy,
only
that
had
was
one channel then.
Okay.
that was our entertainment.
What about telephones? Did you have telephones?
When I was in the Navy, she got the first telephone.
I loved the phone because you can contact anybody in the world anytime you want to. No matter, I mean, you can call the police for help. In fact, I listen to a church program every Sunday morning, which is wonderful, because I'm not able to go.
What about the civil rights movement?
We're down in Nome, Texas. When you went someplace, you had two restrooms. You had one said white and one said black. And they had two drinking fountains. One says white, one says black.
Oh, I was so happy when they got rid of that mess. They're just human, just like the rest of us. Every nationality in the world, you can have something against them, but not because they are a certain nationality or religion. You know,
Okay.
there's good people and bad people.
What about the 1960s? Kennedy was shot?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was horrible. Horrible. I think the world changed when he got shot.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just kind of turned our hearts wrong side out. You know, it just, how could something like that happen? You know, just broke our hearts. The world was never the same after he died.
How do you think it changed?
Nobody trusted anybody. You know, you just, who's gonna shoot who next? You know, and then Harvey Oswald got shot right away too. Wow. So then you just figure every time you turn on the news, who's been shot today? Yeah, it's horrible.
Right after that, you had the Vietnam War and you had the protests.
Richie got drafted. No, he's in the Marines. And he volunteered to go tell
He
that
was
story.
back east getting ready to go. It ended before he had to go. He was all ready. He was just packing, actually.
But there weren't any protests around Morro Bay or anything?
No.
I don't remember any big deals. Everybody seemed to be for it.
Well, there wasn't too many people here to protest.
Last month they closed the power plant. What do you feel about that?
That's okay. If they can figure out another way to make electricity, that's good news for me. Our property up on the hill is, there were lines over it and you couldn't build anywhere else. Our kids had to be a certain distance from the wire underneath and all of that. So now they can build they can have a city up there if they want to.
Was it surprising or controversial when they were building it, or did everybody seem okay with it?
Oh no, there was objections.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
What-
people ruining the scenery, you know. And then they built that breakwater, you know, over there, and then the road around the rock. Daddy worked up there, you know, climbed up the hillsides and broke the rocks down and made the road.
I was cleaning a house, a yard for a woman, and I was telling her she asked me if I was married. I said, yes, I got married, I got one son. And she said, well, isn't it hard to making 30 cents an hour and feeding a family? I said, well, we're getting by, we're not starving. We only got one light globe, but who needs more? You know, because we only had one room. And anyway, he says, well, my husband's going to start building a breakwater out here, and I'll talk to him and see if he can use you out there. The water was still coming around the rock. On high tide, it was, you had knee deep in water. When the tide went out, you could walk across it. It started making a road ramp up into to start the breakwater, start blasting it. He asked me if I was a rock slinger. I said, sure. I didn't know what a rock slinger was, but I told everybody I knew all about it, you know. So we went in rock slinging. We did pretty good until we loaded rocks and they hauled it out. One day there was a great big rock and we were putting a sling around the top, and I was up on the top and old Joe Perry was down at the bottom, and I was inside the two rocks in the crack where they slipped apart. And I reached down to put the cable underneath it, and pretty soon a bang, and I, what the heck was that? And that was George. That rock was slipping. This guy dug a rock out and made this rock slip. Well, he let that other rock come too. If he hadn't dropped the bucket and held that rock back, he'd have killed me. We had dump cars come in, and they used to put the little rock, put the big rock out, then they'd put little rock, and the dump cars would go over the side. So there was no blasting going on. There was nothing for the shovel to do but sit and wait for the drillers and all that to do. And he says, did you ever dump a sidecar? I said, sure. Never didn't even know what a sidecar was. So they loaded it up, and what the heck, all they would do is push that lever. What's so big deal about that? I pulled that lever and I thought I died. That when that thing went over, that whole thing just started. I thought, man, I'm dead. You know, I thought I was going to drown. I was going to fall off that thing. But it really scared me. But anyway, I figured that one and got it back over. And so I thought the next one, I said, I'm just going to pull that handle real easy and it won't jerk. But when you pull that handle, it automatically goes. So I was really prepared for it to vibrate and everything. It didn't bother me. So in the last car, I did the same thing, and the next day, the drillers had drilled and they had blasted, so there was work for the thing. So I didn't have to get out on that thing anymore. I was kind of glad because it was kind of scary.
What do you think about when you think about the future? What do you kind of hope will happen in the future for Morro Bay and
The future?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just suppose it'll continue to grow because this is a wonderful place to live.
Mm-hmm.
The climate is so great. And where else? I'm afraid it'll get too overcrowded. You know, it'll be just like a city, which we didn't want to live in the city or we wouldn't be here.